We are live.
Excellent. Well, good evening, everybody. Hope you've all enjoyed the summer and enjoying these few days of extra summer that the weather has very nicely thrown at us. Our children don't go back to school until Wednesday, Thursday, so they're really enjoying it at the moment. I'd just like the Acting Town Clerk just to read out the notes about the delegation of duties, please.
Hello, just so anyone who's watching is aware, earlier in the year, the end of the Emergency Coronavirus Act occurred regarding councils making resolve decisions remotely, i.e. they can no longer do that. However, this town council resolved to continue with remote meetings for health and safety, with any decisions made being recommendations to the clerk to carry out on behalf of the council, with ratifications through full council. All full council meetings from now on will be held in person. They'll be held in the Emmaus meeting room, which is towards the back of the Minster Parish Hall. There's some information on the website for any members of the public, including a map of the locations. I'll send it out to councillors before the next full council meeting. But at the moment, we're still with our meetings, being cautious and making recommendations to advise me on my decision making as the town clerk. But any major issues that do definitely need a resolution will go to the in-person full council meetings.
Thank you, Matt. So in order to fulfil our obligations, I'd just like to make a quick roll call of councillors and officers. So officer, we have Acting Town Clerk Matt Snowden and Admin Officer Libby Woodhouse. Also present, we have me, Councillor L. Johnson, Councillor Chloe Hopkins, Councillor Dennis Healy, Councillor Anne Willis, Councillor Tom Astell and Councillor P. Astell. We have apologies from Councillor Duncan Jack.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Okay. Declarations. Are there any declarations of interest in respect to the agenda items listed?
Nope.
Nope. Thank you. And are there any dispensations? Nope. Okay, thank you very much. Let's move straight on to agenda item number 4, and that is to note the minutes of the previous Policy and Finance Committee meeting, which were held on the 21st of June, but which were previously circulated and approved at the full council meeting on Monday, the 19th of July.
They just need noting, Madam Chair, because they were approved and we didn't have a meeting. We don't have meetings in August, and the meeting in July was cancelled due to lack of business, so we moved everything to this meeting this evening.
Thank you for that clarification, Matt. Let's move on to agenda item number 5, which is payments. Hopefully everybody has been able to read through the list of payments from the current account listed on pages listed under item 5A, and then the payments to the credit card listed under item 5B. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, just a couple of things to clarify for members. You've got 3 months worth. You've got June, July, August, due to we didn't have those meetings. Just for a couple of clarifications, at the top of the second page of the current accounts, there's the second one down regarding staff payments, expenses. The not bod refers to notice boards. No, it's nothing connected with dead body and all. It's just we're limited to a small number of characters. So notice board is obviously quite a long word, but that was for travel for notice boards. A little bit further down, the office rent for DH Fletcher, that is quarterly. So that's a quarterly amount, with the garage and the unit beneath it being monthly payments. On the third page, there's items for Blashare and Rosendale. Blashare, the transaction detail is Joylight. That's the name of the item, because Blashare are Christmas lights company, and the Joy Light is one of the items that's been purchased and we're awaiting delivery of for the Christmas lights this year. And the Rosendale has an invoice number, but not an item. That is for allotment keys for the Spark Mill plot. But other than that, I think most things are pretty explanatory. But I'm happy to respond to anything councillors may have.
May I just recognise that Councillor David Horsley has joined the meeting. Welcome, David. I'd also just like to comment, also on page 3, about halfway down, under the invoice 3880, there is something that will be making Councillor Peter Astel very happy, in that the dog poo dispenser bags look as if they have arrived, and I understand, Matt, that we have some news on when they will be put up.
Yeah, I'm liaising with the officer again at the East Riding to get them installed. We need to wait for all the additional amount of bags to come through, because they're easier to fill once they're installed. They're very difficult to install whilst they're not affixed to anything. So as I found out, you nearly lose a thumb. So I've emailed today to remind the East Riding to sort out the date to have those installed.
That's great news. And
Chair, just on that one, I mean, we've been nearly 2 years now with these doggy poo bag waste dispensers. If we've got sufficient bags, couldn't we get some up? Some's rather better than nothing. At the moment, we've got nothing, and these are wanted by public. And if needs be, we can get JB Rural to erect them for us.
Well, I'll have to talk to East Riding, because I've already arranged now for them to finalise a date. They've become more keen about it because everything will be going on their property. I'll wait to see what date they come back with, and if it's in the long distance, I'll liaise with JB Rural.
That's fine, Matt. That's fine.
Excellent. Are there any queries with regard to either the current account payments or to the or to the credit card payments, please? No, is everybody happy?
Got a proposal and a seconder for the 5A, the current account payments, please, Madam Chair.
I'm happy to propose. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Horsley.
And the same for the credit card payments.
Again, I'm happy to propose. Councillor Hopkins has indicated she's happy to second. That's fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Can we move on to agenda item number 6, external audit update? Can I pass over to you for an update on this, please, Matt?
Yeah, as councillors may remember, we've still not received the final decisions from the external auditor, Littlejohns, regarding the 2019-20 AGAR. Part of that was because they were inundated with inquiries during the lockdown year, plus they had their own internal issues with staffing. And they've also received correspondence from a member of the public, from a member of the electorate, our electorate, regarding 2021. Forgive me for putting 1920-21 on the agenda. That would be quite a long time ago for them to be reviewing the AGAR, but it's from 2021. We've previously responded to the issues raised, the inquiries raised in the 2019-2021. They haven't responded yet because they're waiting for responses to the latest ones to consolidate their efforts into one response, so as not to ensure there's no contradictions, there's no duplication. Regarding the most recent correspondence to Littlejohns, of the 6 objections raised by the member of the electorate, 4 of them has been classed as ineligible. So there's only 2 of them which we have to respond to. One is questioning the council allowances, concern that the council had not taken into account the independent panel from the East Riding, it's my belief as acting clerk, and councillors will agree, that was taken into account. If you remember our first meeting in person at Tolgavel, there was quite a lengthy debate on this. Councillors looked at took into account in quite a lot of detail the recommendations of the panel, and also looked at the law. So whilst in national law, parish councillors can have allowances, the recommendation from the East Riding's internal independent panel was that there was no requirement for it in the East Riding. However, councillors decided they didn't agree with that recommendation, so went with the national instead. So I'm putting together the evidence to show that the panel's recommendation was taken into account, but an alternative decision was made by this council because the recommendation was just that, a recommendation. The second item was a concern regarding the level of reserves being high. Over the past year with this budget, councillors have placed a lot of what was in reserves to specifically allocated projects. So, for example, our overall budget has £25,000 for floral displays. That entire £25,000 comes from reserves. None of it comes from the precept. Because remember, the precept is just part of the overall budget. The budget is made up of the precept, what's being used, allocated from reserves, and any income. We've also nearly finalised investing £350,000. That's the amount that's been ring-fenced to purchase property. Because in case any member of the public who are watching this meeting might not realise, the town council doesn't own any property in terms of offices. We own some of our allotment land, but we don't own anything else. So the council over several years has been keeping reserves for the ability to purchase offices. We are investing that with the CCLA. Our account's been approved, and there's just one more document to fill in. So hopefully by the end of this week, we should have invested that money with them. So that money will actually get something of a return on it, and it'll mean that money is out of our main bank account and in a specific account with CCLA, which will keep it safe. It's a very respected body. The council's done lots of work looking into this and reviewing it. And so part of the evidence responding to that will be how we're using our reserves. The fact that we have allocated them to projects rather than just being there. The fact that even substantial amounts like the £350,000 is allocated for reserve for property, which has now been invested in a sensible way, which is still accessible to us should we require it. So that evidence will go into respond to Little John's regarding that as well. Once the two answers have gone, and they need them by the end of September, I'm envisaging they'll be sent by the end of next week. There'll be plenty of time before the end of September. Little John's will then assess both and then respond to both ourselves and the member of the public. We'll know the final outcome of those. It's taken some time, but we will finally know.
Thank you. Does anybody have any queries on that? I think that's a very, very good summary. Yes, Councillor Healy.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Matt and Carol and Libby for the time that they've spent responding to this request. And the diligent way that they have responded to the member of the public concerned, who I'm sure will be absolutely delighted with the responses that he's had. And I know that he has expressed his gratitude for the way that the staff have responded to this. On the two objections that have been asked to be further considered, I know that Matt will be responding fully on both of those. And on the issue of councillors' allowances, objection 4, where the member of the public objected to the failure to take account of the recommendations of the independent panel, contrary to section 25(2) of the local authorities brackets members' allowances brackets England regulations 2003. The fact is, of course, that the council did comprehensively take account of the recommendations of the independent panel in accordance with that legislation. We did spend a considerable amount of time at our meeting at Tolgavel Church doing precisely that, taking account of the recommendations of the independent panel. And this council democratically voted to continue with members allowances after having taken account of the recommendations of the independent panel in line with the said legislation. Those councillors who are taking that allowance are perfectly entitled to that. It was a democratic decision taken by this council. And I know that Matt will convey that in his comments on objection 4. And on objection 3, we have done a lot of work in terms of ring fencing of reserves in the current budget for specific projects, including that for a potential community hub, as we know. And we've also signed off this £350,000 into CCLA, which I know that Matt will be making clear in his response to Little John's. So I'm confident that those 2 objections will be comprehensively addressed by Matt. And once again, I just want to thank him and Libby and Carol for the work and the effort that they have put into this over the last few weeks. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Healy. I know Councillor Horsley wants to speak, but I would like that specifically to be minuted, please. The thanks that that we must convey to Matt, to Libby, and to Carol for the hard work that they've put in. And I'm hugely confident that this council will be well above any kind of criticism going forward and will be badged as a gold standard council going forward. Councillor Horsley, you wanted to speak.
Yes, I just think that we should actually place on record one of the points that we made when deciding not to follow the independent panel's recommendations. And that is that what the independent panel was saying was actually totally irrelevant to our allowances. It was made on the assumption that allowances would be somewhat like the allowances made to East Riding councillors. That is £5,000 or £10,000, not 250.
Thank you, Councillor Horsley. Happy, Libby? Excellent, good. Yes, thank you. A good and valid point, well made. Let's move on to the internal audit recommendations. And I know Matt would just like to summarise the workings of the audit recommendations working group. Matt.
Thank you. The first one regarding off-site backup, that's something that I know was a concern regarding our technology. That is now sorted. So Holbeck IT have now got off-site storage. It backs up every evening. It was going to be 6 o'clock. I asked them to wait till 9 o'clock because I don't want the computers going any slower than usual for our meetings. So every night they are back. Our stuff is now backed up remotely. Plus, every few days I change the I'm pointing to it like you can see it's over there. I've changed the external hard drive as well. So we do have two sets of backup there, which is great now. And that was part of the recommendations from the internal audit. B, the working group for the internal audit. The first one was looking at the policies, particularly the financial regulation, standing order and scheme of delegation, and how they correlate and making sure that they match up and that they don't contradict. As documents get changed over time and evolve, they can sometimes things get lost, things get confused. One issue we had at a full council meeting where it was, which approach do we take? Well, standing order said you do A, scheme of delegation said you do B. So it's to make sure that both say the same, both marry up. And one thing that we wanted to strengthen as well is the practice that's detailed within the policies, particularly financial regulation, standing orders, for example, how we manage the finance on a day-to-day basis. The practice matches the policy, because practice can develop as well. People find better ways to do things, to improve things, but it's to make sure that we agree, that the council agrees of the way we do things, and that the document reflects that. Because if the document says we do things in a certain way and we're not, but it's not, we're not doing anything wrong, it isn't that way anymore. It's a contradiction. So it's made sure that it's all come together. So again, I'd like to thank Carol and Libby for their help with that, because we sat down for quite a long time on 2 or 3 days to look through all these documents in detail. The working group looked through them. And if the first one we could just take, so what we need from this meeting is to approve and second them as recommendations to go to full council for approval. The first one, Madam Chair, is probably the most straightforward, because we now do far more electronic banking with the new system. That, if you remember, people coming in and signing checks behind masks previously, but now we've sorted out all the electronic payments. We just needed a short policy that shows the practice of what we do that's written down. So that's the first document. It's just 2 sides. So that's the first document for councillors to consider.
Would you like us to take that now, Matt? Would that be sensible to actually approve that internet banking policy now?
Yeah, if people are happy to propose and second it, or if there are any comments on it, and then we can move on to the next.
So I would like to note as well that as I was leaving the town council this afternoon, our Court of Finances, or one of our councillors who approves our Court of Finances, had actually always there going in the building, ready to look through the file of the Court of Finances, which had actually already been assessed by other independent councillors on a monthly basis. Councillor Healy, you want to make a comment?
I'd just like to propose that the internet banking policy is moved and recommended to full council for approval.
Thank you, Councillor Healy. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Hopkins, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. The next document, Madam Chair, these were more the meat of what the working group was doing. So thanks to the councillors that were on that, because they helped see things in different ways as well. So it was a collective effort. And what the basis of all of these next 3 documents were to go to the latest model documents rather than look our current ones. So we went to the model documents and adapted them to our needs. There's certain places that you can't adapt. If anything in these documents is in bold, it's statutory, we can't change it. If it's not, it's a recommendation as to what the document should be, but you do have the ability to revise it to suit your needs. So first one, the financial regulations. There's no huge changes in it. It's more being making sure it links up with the other 2 documents, and the policy and the practice go together. The only major change, which isn't really a huge one, was things like removing petty cash from the finance regulations, because we no longer use petty cash in terms of money on site. It's now references the fact that we use the debit card or the credit card for that. So there aren't any huge changes. We also wanted to make sure that everything correlated within it. So where it may give a £2,000 limit, it made sense that other limits were £2,000 as well, to make sure there's consistency of approach throughout. So there's not a huge amount more to say on the finance regulations. So it's again, it's over to council if you want to propose a second, or any questions or thoughts on it.
Yes, Councillor Healy.
I'd just like to propose that the revised financial regulations are approved by this subcommittee and put forward to full council for recommended for approval.
Thank you, Councillor Healy. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Willis.
Okay, so next is the standing orders, and as you might know from the notes I put on, each set of notes gets a little bit longer. But just to go through the basics and any changes. As I stated in my notes, this is where we start to get the issues of what standing orders say, sometimes contradicting scheme of delegation. And I'd like to thank Councillor Thomas Dell, who last year seemed to have completely consumed these scheme of delegation standing orders for meetings, and we use them really proactively in the meetings, which kind of helped me see understand the importance and how they all work as well. And it's particularly things like the rules of debate. One of the recommendations, which might be one of the more controversial recommendations, is in the rule of debate, the working group felt that time should be limited to members to speak for 2 minutes on an item. It's up to the chair to control that time, just on the pure basis that with 14 councillors, if everybody wanted to say something, and everyone takes 3 or 4 minutes, that's a long time. But there is the ability for the chair, if needs be, to extend it. But in practice, the committee, the working group councillors felt that 2 minutes would suffice. The committees and subcommittees, again, it's making sure that we're understanding exactly how they work, and there's no contradiction between the 2 different documents. One of the biggest things that I really had to do some real thinking about, Libby really helped me understand this, is the issue of motions, because we had the issue of a written motion has to be in so far advanced, and through Libby's explanation and my explanation, within the policy, I put an appendix which explains the difference between roughly being if the council has an idea of how to do something should be changed. The example Libby gave me, which helped me understand it, is painting the Black Mill. Council wants us to paint the Black Mill a certain colour. They put that motion. That is what's written in the minutes, as opposed to the agenda item to consider the need to repaint the Black Mill, as opposed to consider painting the Black Mill red. That is more some specific motion rather than a question, which is what a proposal is. So it does get quite confusing, but hopefully if you read it and you look at the appendix, it does we've managed to clearly state the difference between a written motion and a proposal, because we were concerned at one point that we could get bound up by no one being able to propose anything in a meeting without initially doing it in writing. But the motion is in writing for the agenda. The proposal is based on a question raised by the clerk as an agenda item.
I'm looking at a town map, Madam Chair, and I can't find Acacia Avenue.
It's my aspirational place to live, councillor. But I'm glad it proves that Councillor herself's read it. So that sort of explains the difference, so we can move on positively in the future. Again, financial controls and procurement. One of the change we've done that, and I've got all these checked by Earlicker as well to make sure we're fine with this. In the old system, it still had the old way that when you get a quoting from a company, a councillor's got to be in the presence of an officer whilst they open the envelope, and it made no provision for emails. So we've revised it to get rid of the old way, to make sure it's okay for emails. That was a section that was in non-bold, so we could develop that. Earlicker are fine with that. And the handling staff matters as well has been revised. So with these revisions in place, we feel that it makes the standing orders suitable for us as we're working now as a council, and also quite robust for the future, and has taken out any impracticalities that hindered us in the past to do things.
I'd like to move that we accept them, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder? Yeah, Councillor Healy. Sorry, Councillor Healy, did you wish to ask a question?
Yeah, just to, again, to make the point, and thank you to Matt and Libby for getting their heads around this conundrum on motions and proposals. I know it is something that sort of was a bit of an issue a few months ago, and when you think about it, you know, you need to be able, councillors need to be able to make decisions at meetings, and so the difference between a proposal which comes out of the meeting and something that is placed on the agenda beforehand is really an important distinction. And I think the Appendix 1 really makes the point and helps us to all understand that. And so I certainly would be happy to second these amendments to standing orders. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, finally, Madam Chair, the scheme of delegation, and this is a bit more of a specific issue to each individual council. And again, part of this
Can I
was
just add,
tightening.
before we go on, we've not actually voted on any of these. I know we've had them proposed and seconded, but do we need to just?
No, I think we'll just vote on them en masse, and then
Okay,
because
sorry.
these have to go forward to full council anyway for
Yeah, okay, sorry.
So what we could do is we could vote on them en masse, and then at full council we can ensure that there is a proper vote, in my understanding, because they all work together.
Yeah, they'll be on the agenda at full council individually as well, because it's to make sure that through checks and balances, that the working group and the committee, and then happy for these to be finally adopted at full council on the 20th. So
Yeah.
going on to the
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't think it's a bad thing that we get the opportunity to go through them. Well, the working group's gone through them already, but we as a policy and finance group get the opportunity to go through them, and then full council gets the opportunity to go through them as well. And I will be testing Councillor Tom Astell on them in the future. He's miles away. Thank you. Sorry, Matt.
The scheme of delegation. This is where there's potentially more changes that reflect the day-to-day of how we do things and term things. And the main, again, it was a case of making sure everything married up, everything referred to the right places, etc. The main changes are the proposal for the Planning, Property and Services Committee to be renamed Planning, Environment and Services Committee to better reflect what it does. Because we own very little property, as we mentioned earlier. But if we did purchase property and we had offices, that could fall under services. So planning, environment, and services. Christmas Lights is currently a working group that comes out of the PPS committee. So it doesn't have an ability to allocate any of the budget that is set for lights. It has to then go to it has to make a recommendation to PPS, who then will approve that, and then it'll get final ratification at full council. Given that Christmas Lights is such a significant spend, and the desire of the town council is to expand it, so it's not just lights during Christmas, it's lights that come in all year round. The proposal is that becomes a standing committee in its own right. Less members, because whilst it's rather than 7 or 8 members, 5, because it's a one-issue committee in a way, rather than all the various different aspects that the other committees cover. That would mean that working group can be delegated to spend the money that is allocated for Christmas lights. And we've also added within the scheme of delegation listing about it that it's also look at non-Christmas lights as well, lights that can be at other times of the year to illuminate the town.
I think, Matt, it's important to say that you can have non-councillors on that one, so that Joy and Prue and people could sit on that as well, and they won't feel like they've been pushed out.
Yes,
we can look at the workings of how that works and stuff in practice as we go. But and whoever else the committee decides.
Yeah, thank you, Libby. That is important, because councillors can have other representatives on committees. We need to figure out through Earlica whether or not they would get a vote or not. In some cases they do, some cases they don't. So we need to clarify that. But they can be at the meetings as a member, even without a vote. And I think that's really important, because the amount of work the Christmas Lights fundraising groups do is brilliant. So it means we can just more or less move on, but more proactively, rather than having to constantly refer back to try and make spend, which can be frustrating when there may be time-limited offers on things that we then miss out on, because it's got to be a month and a half down the road before the committee's allowed to spend the money. The appeals committee. Currently we have a personnel committee and a grievance committee. Looking at all the other model versions of these sort of documents, it should be really an appeals committee rather than a grievance committee. So the personnel committee would deal with any grievance regarding staff. The appeals committee will be where that member of staff then goes to appeal the grievance, keeping the two bodies distinctly separate. So personnel should be dealing with the grievances as well, but any appeal to those grievances needs to be in the separate appeals committee. So that's the biggest change regarding the actual employment of people, stuff that's in the scheme of delegation. So you have your So your personnel committee that also includes, if hopefully it never will have to, it would look into a grievance, but then a separate committee that was previously called grievance committee would be the appeals committee that would deal with any appeals from that grievance. The final aspect is the committee numbers. The only committees this really affects are PPS or PES and policy and finance. The grants committee is made up of 8 because it's 2 from each ward. And the Christmas lights committee that we'd be setting up would be 5. Personnel's 4 for various reasons. The other 2 main committees are currently 8. Previously, it used to be 7. And it's always advised, and this is one of the recommendations from Earnlicker when I sent them documents, that committee numbers are odd so as to avoid the need for a chairman to have a casting vote. So, but in the past, the council decided to raise them to 8. Through email discussions with members of the working group, what I've suggested is that whilst this document that you've got before you at the moment says 8, I'll revise the actual version to go to full council. What I've done is where it says, for example, in policy and finance, that it should be 8 members, in brackets, as of May 2022, with a footnote explaining that until May 2022, the committee will remain at 8 members, as detailed within the version of the scheme of delegation adopted the 25th of June 2018. Upon the election of committee members at the annual meeting of the Town Council in 2022, the number will be set at 7, in line with this revised scheme of delegation approved at full council on the 20th of September 2021. What that basically means is you don't know what has to resign from a committee now, even though these new scheme delegation would be adopted in September. The document itself references the fact that that aspect comes into play as of May 2022 and references why it's staying at 8. It will avoid having to have votes on the actual committee makeup now, and then in May when we're doing the committees, we just do a committee for 7 rather than 8. And hopefully that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense to me. Thank you, Matt. Councillor Horsley had a query.
Yes, it's a minor point, but of course, it doesn't remove the need for the chairman to have a casting vote. It just makes it less likely that he needs to use it.
Yes, absolutely. If people apologise, there are only 6 people at the meeting rather than 7. They could end up with a yes. You're right, Councillor. It could end up. It just, as you say, limits the chance that it might happen.
Thank you. I think this is a very sensible way forward. I'm more than happy to propose this scheme of delegation, although somebody else might prefer to propose it and second it rather than me. Lots of hands going up. Councillor Astel, T. Astel that is, and Councillor Willis both put their hands up. Thank you. But I have got 2 questions, if I might ask them, just relating to all of this, probably relating more to the internet banking policy, Matt, and that is with regard to a policy for CCL with our investments going into CCL, how will that be handled? Will there be a separate policy for investments?
I think that might be covered already in.
Can we check?
Yeah, I'll check into that. Yeah, leave that with me.
And the other issue is payments by backs at the bank. How is that progressing?
Yeah, we don't currently staff are paid by electronic payment, which means that Carol puts payroll with TC associates sort out how much it is for both salaries, pension contributions, and HMRC. Carol then, as in terms of the policy, Carol inputs it onto the bank. I then approve the payments. We're working with them to look at setting up backs, so staff salary payments will automatically be paid after we prove that they're correct, but they will be automatically paid on the last banking day of the month, as opposed to relying on officers to me to be available to come in to press the button. So we'd still have the checking balance where they tell us this is how much it is. Are you happy? We'd say yes, but it wouldn't mean that someone would have to be there 2 weeks later to electronically process the salary, it would automatically go through backs. So Carol is just waiting for a final response from TC regarding how to set that up, how we'll go forward with that.
That's fantastic. I hope we can get that through very quickly. And can I thank you officially, Matt, for coming in during your holiday to ensure that various payments were paid on time. That's
I wanted my own salary to be paid, so I came in.
He would do.
Salary, but
he would do, Chair. He would do because he had an interest.
Well, that is true, but he should not have had to come in during his holiday.
Before we leave this, can I just say how pleased I am that the name change for PPS. I suggested this to Matt months and months ago, and we've come up with this wonderful Planning, Environment and Services Committee. And I might add, it looks like there's going to be a lot more emphasis on the environment, and hopefully a lot less planning applications, because Beverley seems to have got about built up now, apart from the extension. So well done, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So can we just take a vote on these four agenda items: the internet banking policy, financial regs, standing orders, and the scheme of delegation? Is everybody happy with that?
Great.
Yeah, thumbs up all around. Fantastic. Thank you very much. So this we will take forward to full council, and hopefully full council will be as happy as we are with the changes to these policies. Agenda item 7C is to receive a report with regard to the risk assessment working group. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, Madam Chair. Again, another aspect of the internal audit recommendations were to enhance our risk assessments through all aspects of the council. Again, I'd like it recorded, Councillor, thanks to Libby, because Libby's done a lot of work on this, and has been really key to putting these documents together. We haven't finished them yet because it's quite an ongoing process. We're hoping to have them completed for full council, but for council to also appreciate that the risk assessments are living documents, so they're never ever fully finished because they constantly have to change depending on what you're doing. And the risk assessment we've got run from things like skate park allotments. Just basically every aspect. Sometimes we don't realise as an organisation exactly how much we do and what variety of things we do. So you're looking at something like the risk assessments. So we're using the versions that our internal auditor uses, and she was kind enough to let us have copies of the ones that she uses. So we're basing everything on something that we know that the internal auditor is pleased with. And we'll continue to work on those and then feed them back to full council for approval. Can I just ask Libby, is there anything else I need to mention on that, or does that just about summarise where we are with them?
No, I think that's right, Matt. And there's two documents at the moment. There's a risk management scheme and then a more site specific or function specific one. But there's always bits and pieces of work to do. Risk assessments on the office and stuff like that, but we won't get done probably before full council, but those bits will be worked on as and when we can.
Yeah, the main bit will be there to take full council, and by getting them in place, it will also make it easier, I think, in the future, because if we need to do one for something new, we've got a basis, we know what we're doing. And I think with a lot of things like that, it's getting the system up in place and get it sorted to then be able to adapt it and use it for future use. So it's just a verbal report, really. So again, thank you ever so much to Libby for her work on that. And that will be continuing to risk assess over the next few days.
Well, thank you very much indeed. And having been involved on both of the working groups, I know what an incredible amount of hard work has been put in by the officers, and thank you so much to that. I mean, what I will say is without this is like the engine room of the council. Without all the nuts and bolts and the oil being clean and everything working smoothly, the council doesn't work smoothly. So it's really fantastic that we've got all these policies and procedures now in place, and we can move forward. And as I said before, hopefully we will be able to badge ourselves as a gold standard council going forward. That is the end of the agenda. It is now 7:16. Thank you very much indeed for attending. And I look forward to seeing everyone at full council, if not at PES, which is tomorrow, I understand.